I wanted to take a little time tonight with my colleague, Mr. Young, Representative Young from Indiana, to talk a little bit about health care in America, talk a little bit about the Affordable Care Act that is currently being implemented, and talk about the need for real health care reform in this country. And I want to start out by just emphasizing that I firmly believe we need health care reform. I believe that the health care reform we got in the form of the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare is not the health care reform that we need. And I would say that we have lots of proposals here in the House. I think last Congress we had over 200 bills introduced that related to the health care system, reforming our health care system. And this Congress, we have dozens of health care reform related bills as well. So the idea that it's either the Affordable Care Act as we're seeing it unfold or nothing at all, it's a false choice. That's not the choice that we have. There are lots of ideas, lots of much better ideas, I must add. And while I am personally for repeal, certainly want the Affordable Care Act repealed, I want to replace it with quality, patient-centered health care reform. I am not against providing relief to Americans who are feeling the burden of the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare right now. In fact, we had a hearing on the implementation of the Obamacare law in the Ways and Means Committee today, a committee of which I'm a member. My colleague, Representative Young's a member. And we heard a lot of people say, hey, this is the law of the land. Don't mess with it. This is the law of the land. Let it go. This is the law of the land. Any attempt to criticize it, to discuss its shortcomings, is a waste of time. Well, I reject that outright. And, you know, I think the President, through his actions, has rejected that. What am I talking about? Well, it's interesting because we've passed 7 bills in this House, 7 bills that relate to Obamacare, changing Obamacare, repealing a part of Obamacare. 7 that not only passed this House, we sent them to the other side of the Capitol. They passed the Senate. And you know what? The President signed them into law. That may come as a surprise to some folks, but it's the truth. We've passed 7 bills to change, to modify, to repeal parts of, to make better Obamacare, and the President has agreed with us on all 7. He signed them into law.
Are these some of the very same bills, my good colleague, that the President in recent speeches has characterized as partisan, misguided, meaningless? I do believe you may be referring to some of those bills.
Those are the same bills, and I would like to go through, if I can, the 7 bills and talk a little bit about what they do and how they were an improvement. And I think they are evidence that, yes, we'd like to replace this bill with something much better, this law. But in the short term, we will do whatever it takes to provide relief to American workers, relief to American families, relief to small businesses that are under the burden of Obamacare. So let me mention a few of these. H.R. 4. H.R. 4, it repealed the small business paperwork 1099 mandate. Man, I remember when I first got to Congress, I heard from a bunch of folks about the 1099 filing obligation under the President's health care law. We repealed that. You know what the President did? He agreed. Bad part of the law. Next, H.R. 1473. We cut $2.2 billion from what was characterized as a stealth public plan, the consumer-operated and oriented plan, and froze the IRS budget. The President signed that into law. Next, H.R. 674 saved taxpayers $13 billion by adjusting the eligibility for Obamacare programs. The President signed that into law. H.R. 2055 made more reductions to the consumer-oriented, operated and oriented plan that I mentioned earlier. Also to the IPAB, the Independent Payment Advisory Board, an independent board that's going to cut Medicare because it hasn't been reformed when it runs out of money. So that was signed into law. And again, in today's hearing in the Ways and Means Committee, folks on the other side of the aisle were saying, this talk, this criticism about the President's law, Obamacare, waste of time, meaningless, all politics. Hogwash. The President signed a bunch of it into law.